it's kind of breaks the rules because those last two sentences aren't really sentences.
We may not look like it, but we are a couple of rule breakers. We're rebels, mavericks. Okay, not really, but sort of. Then the topic here about breaking rules actually comes as a result of a comment that somebody posted on a recent video. It was the one about the needs versus wants and comparing that, conflating the two and the fatal flaws. Somebody watched that video and apparently they engaged enough to actively dislike the video. I don't know whether it was the same person or not, but they also somebody added a comment, and that comment just said, "Writing isn't math, dorks." But hey, at least we know that it's not just friends and family that are watching our videos now.
Yeah, we like having that dislike in a way because it gives that message, but that doesn't mean that we want you guys to dislike the video. keep liking the video. Don't dislike it. We just like the message that it gives.
Right. Because it says that we're making a difference. The only other video that we've posted so far that has had a dislike was the one about the diversity in exploring diversity in our characters. There was also a rather rude comment that didn't even make it past the YouTube filters. That
I don't think I saw that one.
I don't think you saw that one. But you know, and I know that was kind of that can be a controversial topic. I did not expect the one from a couple of weeks ago to be such a controversial topic. But when we look at the statement made in the comment, writing isn't math, dorks. Well, there's a little bit of a rule violation there. I think there should have been a comma after math if he was actually addressing us as dorks, which I could understand. But it's true. Writing is not math. So my response was, it sure isn't. Because he didn't really, whoever it was that made that comment didn't seem to really connect it to the video, wasn't really sure what they were saying. But it's true. Writing is not a precise discipline in the way that math is. You can't go back and check your work and run it through and say, yes, I got the right answer. There are publications that do try to give you, we'll call them rules to follow, guidelines to follow. And there are reasons for those rules. I think of Strunk and White, the elements of style. That's one of the areas that we look to, or I'm looking to, as a place to find out, how do I evaluate the quality of my writing? And it's not about this is right versus wrong, especially in a moral or ethical sense, but it is about what is effective and what is ineffective. We want to be effective in our writing. And there are things that I have seen that violate the rules given in Strunk and White that actually, in truth, affect the ability to interpret what's being written. Some of the things that I have been reading lately, I did some critique partnership with somebody, read a piece of somebody's story, and what I found in their writing was that there were frequently commas in dialogue that were really just meant to show that the person paused. But commas have semantic meaning in English. Mm-hmm. And rather than just using a dash or an ellipsis to show a pause, they used a comma, and it made it very difficult to interpret the sentence. I've also seen Isaac Asimov, been reading some of his works lately, and I see in his work that in dialogue tags, he'll have a proliferation of adverbs or very flowery dialogue tags. And just like many of the modern editors warn against, I found it distracting, hard to read. I've also been reading Frank Herbert, the book Dune, and I noticed a tendency that he has with commas when he talks about a character who does multiple things. For example, the character stands up and then the character puts their hands in their pockets. That's not an example from the book, but just by way of illustration. Mm-hmm. Rather than saying he stood up and put his hands in his pockets, he would write, he stood up, comma, put his hands in his pockets, period. And when I hit that period, my brain goes, wait a minute, what just happened to the sentence? Because I'm expecting a third thing. Mm-hmm. because the and is missing. So those are some of the areas where the rules have a place, and it's often a good idea to follow them.
In contrast to that, there are ways that we break the rules of grammar and we feel like it actually is effective in doing those things, in getting things across and communicating what we want it to. One example, this is not one that we've seen specifically in our own writing, but we saw an example last night. We were watching a video on mistakes people make in the first page of their book, and we'll link that video up there. And one of the things that he was talking about was the pacing. Make sure that you are giving people information quickly enough that they feel like the story is going somewhere. And one way that they gave an example of doing that is just the short sentence, one-word sentence, perfect, used as kind of the character's thoughts and reaction to something that is happening, rather than saying, so-and-so thought, hey, that's perfect. You're making that much more concise. You're getting the same information across in a much shorter amount of time and keeping the story flowing much better. And it's just one word. It's not technically a sentence. There's no subject and verb there. Mm-hmm. But using that as a sentence is effective at getting the information across in a quick time. And then one that we have both found that we like doing in our writing is what we call alternative sentence endings, mm-hmm. where we will start a sentence, or we'll have a sentence, and then our second sentence will be like the second half of that first sentence, but the ending is slightly different. And there was one instance in my writing where I actually had 3 different endings to the sentence. And this took place in a scene where our character is contemplating some of the mistakes that he has made in life. And the sentences were this: the rays of 1,000 suns couldn't bring enough warmth to soothe the pain he had caused himself. The pain he knew he had caused to others, to Vanessa. So those 3 sentences there's 3 different endings, and each sentence is shorter than the last one because it changes the ending there and kind of keeps everything else the same before that. But I think it's effective. It's kind of breaks the rules because those last 2 sentences aren't really sentences.
Yeah, they're just fragments. And
right.
If we were to submit that as in an English class, they would be marked wrong because they're technically not correct.
Yeah, the pain he knew he had caused to others. It's not a sentence. To Vanessa is not a sentence, but using it as a sentence in the context of what comes before it can be, we think, really effective at getting that information across the way that we want it to get across.
We like that strategic use of sentence fragments. And it was just interesting to me reading your writing to discover you break that rule exactly the same way that I break that rule on purpose.
Yep.
So that was really cool. So our question to you is twofold. One, what is a rule about writing that you have seen violated that bothers you in your reading? And what is a rule that you have seen violated that you think is effective in your reading? Let us know that in the comments, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.